It would be a short presentation, and there is an exciting fight coming in. So I'll be very brief before the fight. It's the debate, so. All right. Well, thank you to the ENACT team, first of all, for pretty much become the de facto standard of ontology representation for I2B2 nationwide and internationally. So that the institution doesn't have to, work much on how to build local things, but not comply with other institutions. I think the I2B2 interoperability has been an issue at the early phase, but now that is being resolved, and I would say most of the data that we represent in I2B2 in an academic health center for data discovery is pretty well covered and maintained very well. And that also gives the opportunity to start expanding and thinking more. And we have some data elements that we have been working on. And I promised to Michelle that we would deposit those ontologies, but it may not be a very ideal way of implementation. That means network perspective or collaboration perspective, more brain needs to be put in to see what's the right representation, but also what is the need. So I may present things and you might say, yeah, why do we need to worry about creating an ontology for that? I do have one, like the ACS one. I'm sure there are other people thought about it, and you may say, yeah, why do we need that? But let's look into that. So few disclosures. Oh, I think I can look into here. Sorry, I don't need to. I serve as a board member, but I don't think I have to disclose any financial conflict of interest in relation to this representation. I have joined recently, last week, to University of Alabama, Birmingham, but the content that I'm presenting is coming from the University of Missouri, the development there, my prior team there. So all the acknowledgement actually goes to the University of Missouri team. So ontology, the I2B2, the other one is another ontology representation for the Greater Plains Collaborative, which is one of the PCORNET network out of 8 networks. And I think we have few members from GPC as well. And most of the ontology that we represent using the ACT ontology, right? And that also enables us the same deployment to participate in the ENACT network. So maintain one single thing, but multi-purpose. On the Missouri side, you see on the bottom there are a few things that is not on the ACT, and there's one thing on the right in the Greater Plains Collaborative, the cancer cases is not in the ACT ontology right now. So we worked on it to see what is the representation, but those domains I think might become prominent in the future, especially I would say the cancer cases representation, and also the document ontology probably would be one of the most important in the upcoming years as we try to extract more clinical notes. And there are a lot of things that you don't want for your research, and there are things that you want. So how do you extract that? So having that is gonna be useful to see what kind of notes available, but does require quite, some work around that. We have a publication in the AMIA annual symposium in the past on the document ontology, so how we did the mapping, but then here's, we don't have the publication in terms of how we group them together. Anyway, the number of terms, you see the yellow zone on the bottom shows the number of terms and the number of records that is covering. So it's quite a bit of number that can be number of records that can be discovered using those ontology terms. So first, LOINC document ontology. If you don't know what it is a way, the LOINC is developing that ontology, and it is a way to tag each individual clinical documents for further discovering those documents. There are 5 domains. those terms are defined, and a combination of those 5 domains define a Loing document ontology task. So the first thing is you have a bunch of documents in the EHR, and that needs to be mapped to a Loing document ontology, which becomes a Loing code. And then you could search if that is being mapped in I2B2, then you can search them. So we build one, and we kept the logical grouping that comes from Loing, but community might think in a different way. But we are presenting the logical grouping. So high level 5 domains, like the kind of document, role, settings, the document is created, subject matter domain, and there's another one. So that's one. The other one is the cancer cases. So it is your tumor registry that is maintained within your healthcare system. I'm not talking about the public cancer registry contribution. So now that you have the data within your organization, we are able to bring the data, link them, and put it in the research data warehouse. And we have done this. In the Greater Plains Collaborative, multiple institutions have done that. And that's why the GPC also have a the NACER format data represented. And if you work ever with the cancer registry data, the NACER is the data dictionary that is being used nationally for registry contribution. But locally, you get the advantage to link that data to your all of other healthcare record. And if it is available through I2B2, you can further discover those data elements as well. So that's another domain I think many institutions have worked on and have linked data in the research data warehouse. And if there's a de facto ontology like in SCT becomes available, I think those data can be represented. And through the ENAC network, like we have it and many other institutions have it, I think those data can become available through the ENAC network as well for analysis. The 2 other that I'm going to present is the SCS data and the ADI data. The American Community of Survey data, it's a lot of variables because it's a representation of information at the aggregate level. If you don't have any idea, it is the SCS survey, American Community of Survey is done every year, and then every 5 years there's the aggregate information created for your geographical location represent lots of variables, but it's the combination of the variables and the values and presented as a percentage of those values. So that makes it about 28,000 total variables. If you simply want to link it at the block group level, that would be 38,000. Now think about one patient have an address, and then you want to present all of those variables and the values in I2B2. It's a lot of replication of information, right? So you may say, let's not do it, and why do we search all of it? Well, researcher may think about what needs to be discovered, and as a data provider, you can think about, oh, I just provide only the important one or all of it, right, if possible, so that you don't need to think about what to filter out. Historically, from research perspective, you might say, yeah, and about 30 variables are probably enough, right? But then if you can do technological innovation, you might want to say, yeah, can I represent all of it? Now, there's a little bit of privacy issues, right? You might be able to uniquely identify patient by a combination of those SCS variables. So there's a concern, so you have to put an honest broker system in the process. But from technological solution perspective, we try to deploy and see if we can make it work, like all variables instead of a few variables, and without replicating the information for each individual patients at the observation fact level. That means keeping the data, but representing as a view of those records. So I don't know if the diagram is big enough, but the idea is very simple, okay? Address being geocoded and has a block group ID, right? And you can link with the SCS variable. So technically for each block group ID, you can replicate those variables to represent at the geographical aggregate level. And then each block group ID is connected to the PAT ID. So you can make a complex join operation to create a view, if your database can handle the view, querying over the view, SQL view as a number of records to be retrieved. And there are technologies those can handle. I don't want to go into the detail. I had presentation about how we do this in Snowflake, but there are other technology that can handle this kind of dynamic SQL view querying. And have done the same thing for area deprivation index, but the number of records is much lower. Now that we don't have to replicate the information per patient, per record for each of those variables, that makes it actually billions of records. I think those are reasonable to do if you have a research need at your institution. And that might bring some interesting analysis through a network like Enact or other network operations that you have. So we try to group the ACS variables by keeping its first step variables and then second stage, third stage, and then the variables and the values. But may not be the most optimal. So I think more brain needs to get in to see what is the best representation and the research needs in the domain. I don't have this in production actually, but it was in our dev environment to grab the screenshot and have a similar representation for the area deprivation index as well. But that makes the data queryable, also extractable for analysis if the linkage is done and the data is being represented in a way that it can be extracted for research. That's all I had. Other data domains of interest, the clinical omics, this is what I call. For example, our institutions are getting data back from Foundation Medicine. There are other molecular pathology that we receive back. There are BAM files, genomic signatures there. But also the report itself, pretty much all of those organizations return the data from in XML format. That means it's a parsable format. Not very much standardized, but there are good, interesting data in there that could be represented, extracted, and perhaps we could query them. But I think some effort needs to go in there in the clinical omics side of the world. For making those data discoverable, but also analyzable. Thank you, everyone.
Do we have any questions for Abu Mosa about this presentation? If you come up to the mic, you can take a couple questions.
Thank you much for your talk. I really like the loin codes. And I asked myself, why, if you're using loin codes, why don't you use concepts like the International Patient Summary? Because the IPS would offer some FHIR concepts like a genomics report. It's all in there. It would be a combination of different things. It could be a good organizer. It just came with me when I looked up the loin code for the IPS. So question would be, if we already heard ORMAP, couldn't be another way instead of inventing new concepts and new congregations of data to look into the FHIR domains.
For which component you are talking about? You said the LOINC. Is it the LOINC document ontology?
Yeah, the IPS would offer a nice scheme for organizing the left panel. And it would organize, it would be the demographics, the labs, the results, genomics. It would be all in the tree. Might be worth having a look.
Probably worth something to look. I don't know if in the I2B2 community we have been using that, but
we used it a lot in Germany for the Medical Informatics Initiative. It's all organized according to FHIR profiles. Could be something for 2028. So,
no, I think that's great to know. I think the history of I2B2 became how the data is being coded here.
I know that's a good question actually, but
it's called IPS, right?
Yeah, International Patient Summary.
International Patient Summary. Well, I don't know who would be interested in tapping into that, but something might be worthy to maybe a presentation from you guys to the community to see what it is and One of the interesting thing of I2B2 is it's not that you have to have one single ontology. So it can accommodate different ontologies for searching the same data elements. So if you have an IPS ontology built for I2B2, so then the next interesting thing would be to bring it, make it available so that other institution could try it out, or maybe a demo one to show that, oh, this is how it works. And we could think about whether our institution would be interested in also accommodating to those ontologies in our deployment.
Yeah, let's talk later, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. So you just talk about the GUID. So it inspired me to think about something like a spatial analysis. So our patients from different groups, local zone can affect each other, not only in transmittable or infectious disease, but only on chronic disease or psychiatrical field. So if we, in the future, we can integrate the social determinants, psychiatrical features and physiological features and social interaction features ontologies into the database. Maybe we can study the some disease trends in the future, like chronic disease trends and infections and how social interactions and the psychology affect the human longevity or human diseases break out, or even the epidemic or pandemic trends.
Yes. After the integration, there are a whole lot of opportunity for analysis. And there are two different perspectives. From the data provider perspective, we try to innovate and do things hoping that the investigator would tap into. So if you're interested, I don't know in your institution have that, but many institutions actually worked on the geocoding approaches and integrating geographically linked data sources. ACS is an example, ADI is the other one, but environmental data is also a possibility of integration. After geocoding, technically you can link anything that is geographically linkable. The caveat is your methodology has to take into the account of the fact that the address of record and the person's disease occurrence time may not correlate exactly at the same time, but with the so those needs to be incorporated into the those limitations has to be incorporated into the process of your analysis. There are publications out there. I have one publication, but I know colleagues who published in that domain. So huge possibility. Integrating at the patient level, social determinants of health is also a possibility. We have one project at the University of Missouri where commercially available person level data can be demonstrated that can be linked to the health record. Obviously, you have to have the governance protocol, IRB and ethics all covered for that. But once you get everything covered, those are possibilities and has been demonstrated in real. So those are possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.